So this is called properties of exponents, and it's like, how do you handle the weird exponent situations? I want to tell you a story about my dad who lived in a 2-story condo in Florida. And it's kind of like a big fraction, okay? And my dad lived on the bottom story. He's going to be the X, and he lived down there. And he was happy on the bottom story of the condo because he liked, you could just walk right in from the street. He didn't have to climb any stairs. He was kind of old. By the end, he was 85 years old. And he didn't like walking upstairs to get to the upper level condos. Okay, so he was happy on the bottom floor. So he wasn't negative about it. He was happy. He was a happy guy down there. Okay, now, there were some people on the upper floor who didn't like the upper floor because they bought it when they were young and it was fine to go up the stairs, but then they got old, they had to replace a knee, their hip is starting to hurt a little bit, and so they don't like being on the top floor anymore. So they were negative about it, kind of like that. Now, what your job is to do is to get those to move so that they're happy. It's just a way to think about this. So that x squared. Okay, so we had a singing telegram there, but I was telling you a story about how my dad liked to be on the bottom floor. And other people that had bought their condos on the top floor when they were young, they weren't that happy to be up there anymore when they got old. So your job is to make everybody happy. So we're going to take this and we're going to move it down to the bottom level, because you can do that. You can sell your condo on the top floor and buy a condo on the bottom floor, and all of a sudden you aren't negative anymore. That's just a way to think about it. Do you get there might be people that are on the bottom floor? Like, let's say there's some other X's that aren't happy on the bottom floor. I can give you some reasons. They know that the top floor condos have a little bit better view because you're up higher, you can see further. This is actually true in Miami. The higher you go, the more expensive the condo is. Because do you get, if you're in the very top floor, you get the best view? It's called the penthouse, the top floor of the condo. If you're in the very top floor, you pay way more money to be up there because you get the best view up there and you also get a good breeze. And it's also really hard for people to steal your stuff. If you're on the bottom level, people can just break in your window and steal your stuff really easy. But if you're on like the 31st floor, how are they going to do that? Okay, so my point is, higher level condos have some advantages. So this guy wishes he was on the top floor. So what do? You move him up to the top floor. And then all of a sudden, his exponent will be positive. All right, so that's how I like to explain. It's a dumb way. There's a mathematical way to do this, but I think it works pretty well. Do you get if I then asked you to simplify this, you'd be like, well, just move this up to the top floor and make the x to the thirds positive. That's all you got to do. I think it works super fast and easy. And then, of course, the final answer is x to the, well, do you know whether to add them or whether to multiply them? Let me make sure you understand why you're going to add them. It's because x squared, isn't that really like xx? And x to the third, isn't that really like xxx? And if you're timesing them, you realize it's all one big times problem. How on earth would you look at that and think it's x to the sixth? It doesn't make any sense. There's 5 of them. It must be x to the fifth. You get how you add them when they're like this? So what's my final answer to this question? It was x to the fifth. And it's positive. Now, another smart kid could correctly say, well, Mr. Server, couldn't you just go and subtract the exponents? Because I've heard you subtract the exponents when it's like this. Would you agree that 2 minus negative 3 would be 2 plus 3, which would be x to the fifth? Yeah, that works too. It still comes out to x to the fifth. Do you get that? 2 minus negative 3 makes x to the fifth. But the reason I'm giving you that other way about just moving it to the other side and making it positive is sometimes it's just 1 over x to the negative third. And then people are like, well, what am I supposed to subtract the exponent from? And then I think my way of saying it is better. This guy's unhappy down here. Just move him to the top, make him happy. That's going to be x to the third at the end. Now, the way you could do it, if you really wanted to force it into being an exponent problem, is it was 1 over x to the negative third. Let me explain. It was 1 over x to the negative third, but isn't 1 actually equal to x to the 0 power? This is kind of a stretch, but it's true. And then you could go 0 minus negative 3, which makes plus 3. It's x to the third, which is what I said. So either way, it works. So really the question comes down to this. Will you know how to handle things like this? X to the second over y to the negative third with an extra y up here. Will you know how to simplify that down? And I personally would go, this guy's unhappy, move him up to the top, and then put him with the other y's. They can all live together. Would you please simplify this answer and tell the kid next to you what you think it is? These two rows, you're always comparing this way. You were going to work with the two people behind you. You were going to work with the two people behind you. And that's you and you. Compare with each other, please. Go. It's you three. You have hard work and you got to compare to both people. All right, do you get that the x squared doesn't have anybody to go with, so it's just x squared? Why didn't we move it? Well, if you move it to the other side of the fraction bar, it's going to be unhappy. And you could, in theory, move this down and make it x to the negative 2, but something I haven't said yet is you can never leave your answers with negative exponents. If you ever left an answer for me of x to the negative third, it's wrong. It's weird, but it's considered not simplified. What if you did it everything right? Well, then don't say x to the third. Put in a fraction bar and then go, oh, he's unhappy where he is. 1 over x to the third is the appropriate answer. Because listen, hear me. If you ever give an answer that has a negative exponent, then you're doing it wrong. Don't leave negative exponents in your answers. See, this one's equal to this one, and this one does not have negative exponents, so that's the one I'd want. Okay? All right. So do you get what to do when it's a to the second to the fourth? That's one of the exponent rules, and that's what today is about. Well, you either add them or you multiply them. And I know you could just guess. How many of you are 100% sure? Raise your hand if you are 100% sure. Awesome, that's most of you. Now, I think I can get that up to everybody if you just think about what it means. A squared, would you agree that a squared really means a times a? Isn't that what a squared means? Do you agree with that? Okay. And now we've got that to the fourth, which really means AA times AA times AA times AA 4 times. Look at that. And how on earth would you tell me that the original problem, which by the way was a squared to the fourth, if you look at that, you're going to know it's 8. There's no way it could be 6. There's no way you could look at that and think the answer was 6. So you'd know to multiply them. So if you're ever flipping a coin and you're like, I can't tell if this is the kind you multiply or you add, you can break it up into what it really means. So let's say we had this. First of all, move those unhappy y's. They don't like being on the bottom floor. Well, I moved it up. Now it's positive 1. That's the whole point of moving it, is so it isn't negative anymore. And then those are sitting right next to each other. Isn't it just y times y? What is y times y? Isn't it y squared? Yeah. So now I'm left with x to the third y squared over x squared. And then if you're stumped, which I understand every now and then, you just like, I'm not sure what to do. We can write out what this really means. It means x over x. And then there's a y squared, which is a y. And if you write out what it really means, you realize those will cancel. And the final answer is xy squared. Okay, so I'm giving you some tools for how to know, like, I'm not sure if I should add them or subtract them or what. There's two ways to do this problem. Do you get that if you leave an answer that has a negative exponent in it, it's for sure wrong? Then simplify this down one of the two ways. There's more than one way you could work it. Write that answer and compare it to the person that I've paired you with for today. Libby Watt, what was the final answer?
X to the 7th.
How did you do it? You are correct, but how did you get x to the 7th?
Well, I put the x to the negative 4th on top and then just added up the...
Yeah, and all of a sudden if the x to the negative 4th was on top, it would be happy again. And now it's x to the 7th. Yep. There's other ways, but that's the right answer. Raise your hand if you had x to the 7th. Okay, cool. All right. Now, here's the most complicated kind. 2ab squared, all of that to the third, times b to the negative 4th over b to the third. Holy cow. All that at once? Yes. And do math one step at a time. Find part that you can do and do it. But is there an order to math? Isn't there something called the order of operations? Yes. And so let's talk about that. Parentheses are supposed to be first, so if you could do anything in here, you should, but do you get I can't do those parentheses? So then I go to the exponent. You should be dealing with that first then. And this needs to be dealt with too. After I dealt with those two things, I'd probably just rewrite it and see what I got now. All right, there's kind of a gotcha on this. If you have an answer of 2, you have a 2 in your answer, you forgot to put the 2 to the third and make it 8. Who had an 8 in their answer? It's a lot of you guys forgot to put the 2 to the third, didn't you? Because see, that 2 is to the power of 3. 2 to the third is 8. Now I'm going to put the a to the third. And I know there's a 1 here, but really what's happening is the 1 times the 3 makes 3. So a to the third. Am I all done? No, I'm doing one little thing at a time. This kind you multiply. B to the 6th. And now, I'm putting in my fraction bar, putting in my b to the third on the bottom that I didn't touch yet. I'm not saying I'm done. I'm just trying to clean it up. And these guys go down to the basement to make them positive 4 down there. So that's going to be b to the positive 4 down there. So I got that part done. I moved it to the basement. Okay. See how I did some, but I didn't try to do it all at once? The biggest problem is if you try to do everything in your head at once. It's really, really hard to keep it all straight. So I did some of it. Now I got to go in and finish it off. Can that 8 go with anything else? No. Are there any other negative exponents that I have to move around? No. Then, these two could go together, couldn't they? Yeah. So then that's going to become b to the 7th on the bottom. And then there's an 8, a to the third, b to the 6th on the top. And now I got to deal with my b's. Some smart kid's going to go, I'm going to go b to the 6th, and I'm going to take the 6 minus the 7, and I'm going to say that that's b to the negative 1. But then they're going to go, oh, wait, I can't have b to the negative 1. And so then they're going to be stuck. Like, I'm not sure what to do. I get it. Because if you leave b to the negative 1 in your answer, it's wrong. So then here's how I'd do it if I was stuck. I know some of you guys got the answer, but I would write out what it means. B to the 6 means beat them 6 times. Here we go. And b to the 7th is like this. And then I'd go, oh, well, it's easy. These just all cancel out. And there's one b left on the bottom. So that's what it is. There's one b left on the bottom. Isn't that kind of like b to the negative 1? It is. B to the negative 1 is like a regular b on the bottom. So then the final answer has the 8a, which we haven't even touched that in a while. 8a to the 3rd, and then there's a b on the bottom, so you go divided by b. Raise your hand if you had that perfect. Okay, cool. If you didn't, did you see what you did wrong? All right, now this just comes down to you making sure you got this. So on today's, which is a fairly longish worksheet, I'm going to talk about the concept of prime numbers. Because I'm going to have you skip the prime numbers. But you need to know what the prime numbers are to be able to skip them. Problem 1, it is the very hardest one. Because a lot of people think 1 is prime and a lot of people think 1 is not prime. I'll give you one that's for sure prime. Problem 7, that's prime, so you get to skip it. How do you tell if something's prime or not? Hint, there's a rule for primes, and it goes like this. Prime numbers have exactly 2 factors. Because, see, the factors of 7 is 1 times 7. Prime numbers have exactly 2 factors. 1 is kind of a weird case. So does 1 have exactly 2 factors? 1 times 1. Is that 2 factors? No, it is not. Prime numbers have to have exactly 2 factors. 1 is not prime. A lot of people put it in a list of primes because they don't know the rule. 1 is not prime. That means you have to do number 1. You are skipping the prime numbers. 1 is not prime. Is 2 prime? Yeah. Is 3 prime? Yeah, you get to skip a bunch of them. All right. Number 1 is not prime, though. Zeke, would you read me number 1? Power of 4? Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, I have 2 choices. I can either, well, actually, there's rules on math. I'm supposed to put these things in the parentheses together first, so I should do that. On this kind, you add the powers up. Do you get that means this is x to the negative 5th and then to the 4th? And then this problem's easy. It's just x to the negative 20, but what's the problem with that? It'll be marked wrong, Leo. Why would that be marked wrong?
It has a negative exponent.
Yeah. So what do you do? This is the moment where I think my dad's condo example works pretty good. Put it over 1 and then realize you can make him happy by moving him to the bottom floor. Maybe he wants to have that walk-in condo with no stairs. Final answer be 1 over x to the 20. All right. So I have you skip the prime numbers. If you get stuck on what the prime numbers are, ask the kid next to you. try to remember prime numbers have exactly 2 factors. They're kind of like 7. All right, that's all I got for you for today.